Machlokas between Rav Nachman and Rav Sheshes
about waiting to dry.
about using different types of
Sticks.
the stick for skewering the animal you want to roast on the fire. We have two versions of that. So do you want to go through that again, or do you feel you have that?
I have it.
You want to start directly afterwards then?
What's the directly after that?
The Hilchos, I believe.
The Hilchos Yevishta.
Mm-hmm. See it?
The rules of Yevishta is dry.
Hilchos means after we've had a sort of a give and take, which shows that there are different cases that are involved. And we don't really know exactly what the halacha is, so it clears the air. Hilchasa, and the halacha is, after all said and done, it's like we would say, and the envelope.
It's dry, it's permitted. It's wet, it's asur.
Right. Which means we're really adopting the view of...
First.
Huh?
The first version.
No?
Sorry?
Actually, second version.
Sorry.
In my opinion. Because to say Yavesh is mutter, okay, if it was going in the first version, it would be going according to Rav Sheshes, which is very surprising because usually when Rav Nachman is arguing with Rav Sheshes, we pass like Rav Nachman. Okay, but that's not a direct disproof, I'm just telling you unlikely. But the second part, where it says that the moist one is usser, okay, that could be again. That would be according to the first version where we said everybody agrees that the wet one is usher. But it could be, it makes more sense to me at least if it's going according to the second version. And it says the dry one is mutter. According to the second version, it said that everybody agrees that the dry one is mutter. In the second version. And then it says the wet one is usher, because in the Gemora it says that's what they argue about, how to deal with the wet piece of wood. And the Gemora says that's where they argue, that's where Rav Nachman would say usher, which would make sense, we're passing like Rav Nachman. And the order also would make sense, because we're starting out with the dry one, and then we're saying the halakha on the dry one, then we're going to the wet one. In the first version, we actually did the opposite. We said everybody agrees the wet one is asur, and they only argue about the dry one. So why put the wet one second and the dry one first? According to the first version, that would be the wrong order, really. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But to me, the hardest part would be that if we were saying the other way, the way you were trying to learn, it would end up being going like Rav Sheshes, which I don't think we would do. In any event, either way, we know the halacha. Dry is mutter, wet is asur. Right, that's what it says, Hilchasa. Can you read the Hilchasa? The Hilchasa, it's like, no, the Gemora says the Hilchasa right in the middle.
Hilchasa, Bashta Shari, the dry is mutter or Tivasa asur. And the wet one is asur.
Okay? So in the end of the day, it's pretty clear, the halacha. So let's assume most of our wood is dry wood. In our day and age, it would turn out that if you put a skewer to roast something, you can use a dry piece of wood, but not a wet piece of wood. It could be you would like to use a wet piece of wood more, because as you put it in the fire, you don't have to worry it's going to get burnt up. Whereas if you put in a dry piece of wood as a skewer, just like the rest of the animal is in the fire, this is also susceptible to going up in flames, this dry piece of wood. Seems like you'd want to have a skewer that was moist and wouldn't catch on fire so easily. It's not true, we don't allow that. Okay? So that leads us up to the next part.
The rush.
Torash Rava. Okay, who would like to read?
The rush Rava. Isha, La, the Kameis, the deer, and Aitzim. The woman not allowed to go into a shed of trees of wood.
Right.
And Torah they have odd
Oud.
to take from it a piece of
It's like a twig.
twig.
Usually it's used for kindling or something like that. Or for actually lighting the fire, like a long
A taper.
twig that you can... Hmm?
A taper. Narrow little.
Maybe. I know for Hanukkah they always sell this long candle to light all the candles with this long, thin candle. Mm-hmm.
What is Isha Minavi, a woman, Lo Tikanes?
Deer and Aitzim. And Torah being wood to take out shards of wood.
Shards?
Shard of piece.
That's how you're translating oud?
Yeah.
Okay.
Skinny little taper
Twig.
piece.
Yeah, I don't know. Let's see how Rashi explains it. The Rashi would end up being, maybe we'll start with the Rashi of Hilchasa. Maybe there's a Hiddush in the Rashi. Who would like to read the Rashi?
Me.
Okay.
Hilchasa, the halacha is Hach Hilchasa Aliba Daman to Isle Muktzah. This halacha is a court's opinion who holds, and he does hold a muktzah. Akva,
Ikva.
It's wood, isn't it?
Wood.
fixed.
Wood?
Fixed.
It was fixed.
It was fixed.
So somebody's fixing the halacha, not fixing like the game is fixed. It means, like a mezuzah, that's the bracha we make when you put it in a mezuzah, likuboa mezuzah, like you're putting it in place to be there permanently. So that's called, when you decide the halacha, you're being koveya the halacha. It's an expression. So Rashi's saying, who's being koveya the halacha over here? Who's actually talking? I mean, usually nobody asks that question. We just assume it's what's called the Tsama de Gemora. It's the general Gemora. Like the sages, anonymous sages, as it were. But here Rashi seems to feel we have to apply one of the opinions to say that not everybody would agree with this Hilchasa. It's a big Kiddush what Rashi's saying now. Normally Hilchasa is the general halacha that everyone has to accept. Here Rashi seems to be saying it. Like, who's saying this Hilchasa? Who's being koveya the Hilchasa? Someone who holds a muktzah. I guess somebody who holds like Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda was a Tana, and we're now dealing with the halachas that were said by Rav Nachman and Rav Sheshes, who are Amoraim. So it's not Rabbi Yehuda per se, but it's someone who must hold like him, according to Rashi. Rashi wants to let us know, seemingly, this is also uncharacteristic of Rashi, because he wants us to know that this hilchasa should be ignored. It's like saying the Sfardim said a certain halacha, right? Let's say Rav Avaji Yosef said a halacha, but it doesn't really apply to us because he's not our posek, right? They're Sfardim or whatever. So Rashi's like distancing himself from this Gemora, which is extremely radical of Rashi to do. I can't remember any hilchasas where Rashi ever took this approach. We're going to see now why Rashi sort of wants to put this in perspective, and so we should know who made this statement, and to know why it doesn't apply to us. It's extremely, I would call this a controversial Rashi, personally. Why would he say that? Why would he say that it's only the people who hold a muksa would say this hilchasa? And by the way, before we see the rest of the Rashi, why would that make sense? Because what are we saying?
What is also?
The dry is mutter.
I would say it was the opposite.
What?
I would think it was the opposite.
Why would you say the opposite?
The one that holds by the green stick, the one that's wet, that you cannot use. That's the muktzah, not the grass stick.
They're both said together.
Yeah.
Okay. Someone got up and said both statements. Okay, now Rashi's saying, you know who got up and could make both of these statements? Someone who holds that there's an Isra of Muksa, generally speaking. It may not be because both statements are in that vein, but he made both statements. So whoever got up, if he said one of the two statements, then he obviously said both of the two statements.
So then he's referring to the first one, right?
Huh?
He's referring to the first statement?
First statement what?
Where we had a Ikadamra.
No, those weren't statements. Those were versions of Machlokas, Rav Nachman, and Rav Sheshis. But now at the end, Hilchasa, someone getting up and making a statement, clearing the air. After all is said and done, I'd like everyone to know the halacha. Who just got up and said that? Who just got up and said, I want everyone to know the halacha?
Okay.
That's what Hilchasa means. I'd like everyone to know the final halacha, l'maisa, the final line, the bottom line. So Rashi says, you know who just got up and made that statement? Rashi says, even though I wasn't there, I'm just reading about it in the Gemora, but I can figure out who must have said it. You know who must have said that? Someone who holds a muksa. Meaning, someone who holds a muksa would say the wet one is asur. Because what had the Gemora said? In the second version, at least, which I'm claiming this is going according to the second version.
Which one is mutter?
It was a machlokus.
Maybe with a big fire.
It was a machlokus. You don't say it's mutter. You really want to say it's mutter? Machlokus. Between Rav Nachman and Rav Sheshis. Right? And what was it based on? What was that machlokus based on? You remember?
It's between.
The Gemora explained why each person held his position.
Rav Sheshis and Rav Nachman, right?
Yes, why did they say what they said? First of all, who said what? Rav Nachman said, and Rav Shesha said mutter. Now, why did they say each one their respective statements? Anyone else remember?
Yes.
Yeah?
Because it's only used, it was only used for burning, where Rav Nachman says it's awesome. It's only used for burning, right? And it's used for any other use, which is awesome.
I don't believe you're reading the second version. You're reading the first version or the second version?
Mali.
No, that was the first version.
Is it the first version?
You guys know where the first version ends and the second version begins?
After the Ikadamra is the second version.
No, up to the Ikadamra is the first version.
The Ikadamra beyond is the second version.
The Ikadamra is the second. The Ikadamra is the second version.
The second version.
Yeah, I'm saying this whole thing's going according to the second version. So in the second version, they're arguing about the wet one.
Yes.
And what is it based on, that argument? The Gemora explains why they're arguing.
Because the quantum people holds us also because it's not fitting to be burnt. It's not pleasant. You can't burn the wood. It's wet.
Right.
And the quantum people
Meaning, you really can't burn it, or just people don't?
don't burn it.
People don't burn it. People don't, generally speaking, use it to burn. Is that right? I mean, am I just making this up, or did Rashi say that?
The Gemara says it.
What?
The Gemara says it.
Saying what? So people don't, generally speaking, burn these things. They don't use them.
Yeah.
So it's like a rock. And if you're not going to use it, then the stick is like a useless object, which is like a rock, which is asur. Why is it asur? Because you hold a muksa.
It's not.
That's what Rashi is trying to bring out. In the second version, whoever said the wet one is asur, it was because of muksa. And the other fellow, by the way, who said it's mutter, you know why he said it's mutter?
Use it in a big fire.
Use it in a big fire. Now, not everybody has a big fire, but he still wants to say the fact that you could use it in a big fire should save it from being asur. Is that said by a person who holds of Isser Muksa or not? Holds of Isser.
He doesn't hold.
What?
He doesn't hold.
Then why would he have to talk about it's fit for a large fire? Who cares if it's fit? Saying those very words, it's fit for something, is like saying it has a function.
Right.
Only a person who holds a muksa needs to find a function for things. He's the one who has to strive to say, oh, it does have a function, so therefore it's not muksa. That whole discussion, even the one who says it's mutter, because he says it has a function, in this sort of case which is very rare, because not everybody has a large fire anyways. But still, that whole approach to say it's muksa because it doesn't have a function. The other one turns around and says, no, it's not muksa because it does have a function. Okay, whether you call that a function or not, that's the machlokus. Whether the fact that some people would have a large fire and they could use it, but most people don't have a large fire and they can't use it. So now how do you look at the object? You go with the majority of people who wouldn't use this, or you go with the minority of people who still has a function in society, at least amongst a small minority.
It's funny because the object itself, when it's wet, is not usable.
No, it is.
Except for
if you're of that minority, imagine like the wealthy, like we're talking about the wealthy, the 1%. They say today the wealthy are the 1% of society, control 99% of the economy or whatever. Right? So they talk about the 1%. Now, if the wealthy do something, do you think that makes it like a thing that's done?
So
the wealthy would burn their money out. Would take this and burn it.
So it's a bit like saying you can't use a rock on Shabbos, but if you have a nut to crack, you can use that.
Well, I hear what you're saying, yes, but you see, first of all, burning wood is a function of wood. Most people do.
Not wet wood.
Yeah, but if you have a big fire, then right away, as soon as you throw it in, it takes care of the moisture and it turns into a dry piece of wood. So it really does function as wood that's being used for a fire.
You're burning it, you're consuming it.
That everybody agrees that wood is good for using for fire. Wood is not muksa because you can use it for fire. We're just wondering, this one isn't really used for fire because most people, the 99% who aren't wealthy, have these little tiny fires in their fireplace. If you come to their door selling them, the door-to-door salesman guy who all he could get that day were the wet pieces of wood, he wouldn't make any money. But if he went a little bit farther up the hill to where the wealthy guys live, and tries to sell them that wood, he'd sell it out. Because they don't care if it's wet. They have a big fire anyways. They just need a lot of wood.
It'll dry quickly in that big flame.
Yeah. It's like to ask a question, if you hang up laundry on Shabbos and it's wet when Shabbos comes in, which makes it muksa, right? You can't use a wet shirt. And then it dries out in the middle of the Shabbos, are you allowed to take it off and wear it? Do we say, well, when it's Shabbos started, it was muksa. So we have a rule. It started Shabbos as muksa. The whole Shabbos is muksa. Huh?
It is muksa.
That should be the normal rule. However, something you expect to be fitting in the middle of Shabbos, you expected that to happen. Some people are makel on that. Like we talked about, he expected the sukkah to fall down. Remember we had a case like that? That I think also depended on Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Yehuda, by the way. So then there could be an argument at least If you expect it to dry out, then that's not muksa. It's right as Shabbos came in, you knew this is going to be a fit shirt in just a few hours. So they actually say, in a country where it's very hot, like Eretz Israel, especially in the summer, then you can wear it when it dries out, because you expected that to happen. Everyone knows it'll happen. It's like a fact. It's not like a speculation. Whereas if you live in a colder climate where things don't always dry out in the middle of Shabbos, so then you couldn't wear it necessarily if it dried out. It wasn't expected. So here, if I throw a piece of wood on the fire, everyone knows in a second or two it's going to be kindling. It's going to be real wood for the fire. The fact that it's moist doesn't really matter in a big fire. You ask the kids who are gathering wood. You saw right before Lag BaOmer, the kids are running all around with these thousands of pieces of wood that they found. Even if they found it attached to a guy's house, they would rip it off and carry it away. I heard a black guy saying that when he was younger in Harlem or one of these places, that there was a guy who was so desperate for money, he tore off the building a fire escape to take all the metal and sell it to get whatever he was trying to, probably drugs or something. So kids do that with the wood right before Lag BaOmer. So, do you ever see a kid saying, no, don't take that, it's wet wood. I didn't see any kid not taking the wood because it's wet. They'll take any wood if it's not nailed down. Even if it is nailed down, they'll take it.
Take the nails too.
So, that whole discussion is really a discussion that a person would have if they hold of muksa. The one person will say, look, it doesn't have a function because most people, the 99% who have small fires, don't use wet wood in their fires. And Rav Sheshes is like, well, the 1% who are very important people, very influential people, and everyone, wants to think like them, wants to be like a wealthy guy, so all those people do appreciate even wet wood. So how can you say it's muksa? Okay, so that's Parashi's point, by the way. Okay? This Hilchasa is telling us to go like the second version, and in the second version, that's what it says. The dry one is mutter because everyone agrees it's mutter. And the wet one is asur, and the whole reasoning is because of muksa. So Rashi says this Hilchasa, which is basically possibly like the second version, could only have been said by a person who holds a muksa. Excuse me. Okay? Mm-hmm. That's all we saw in Rashi so far. Okay, let's get back to the Rashi then. Who was reading the Rashi? Me. Everyone have the Rashi, the Hilchasa? Let's start it again, please. Hilchasa. This statement, Hilchasa, etc., etc., etc.
Lieber the man the Islay Muktzah.
Ikva.
According to the opinion of who fixed the Muktzah.
The word fixed is the verb of the sentence, so put it in an appropriate place. Whoever, this Hilchasa was fixed, was put in place, right? When you declare the halach, you're being kovea the halach. It's called being kovea the halach. So this Hilchasa was put in place, was fixed in place by
opinion who holds a muktzah.
Right, and the person who does hold a muktzah, i.e. Rabbi Yehuda.
Anon Rabbi Shimon,
Svira.
Lay.
Anon means what?
Sviralon.
Good, Sviralon. Hear what he's saying? Hear what he's saying?
Yes.
What's he saying?
We hold like Rabbi Shimon.
We hold like Rabbi Shimon. Hear those words? Hear what Rashi's saying? Those are Rashi's entering a zone now which he doesn't normally enter into. Rashi's usually neutral, right? Hold to. Rashi's usually neutral. And here, Rashi's going out on a limb and he's saying, by the way guys, I'll tell you how we paskin. very rare to find Rashi doing that, by the way. So you have to appreciate the rarity of it and the uniqueness of this Rashi, I think. Rashi's doing something extremely out of character, as we say. Rashi usually, it's like saying, it's like a person getting up and giving a political statement. You know, certain Rabbanim who shy away from politics, but all of a sudden they get up and they make a political statement. Everyone's like, what? Right? That's like this Rashi. Not that he's making a political statement, but in terms of Rashi doesn't normally get into how do we actually paskin. Just like, you know, explaining the Gemora. Every line of Gemora he wants you to understand, but all of a sudden Rashi's saying, by the way, you should know how we hold. That's a very, you know,
Controversial.
yeah, it's like putting yourself out there. All of a sudden you're discussing your private life, as it were. So, but Rashi feels he has to do it. Why does Rashi feel he has to do it? Because whoever says Hilchasa, who says Hilchasa? Who gets up in the Gemora and says Hilchasa? I think here we're learning a lot about Gemoras. We don't have that many of them, but there are throughout Shas a number of places with the Gemora, after a long series of discussions of where it's not clear how we paskin, we just argued and argued. At the very end, the Gemora will often say the Hilchasa, and by the way, the halacha l'maisa is, right? Which is how a lot of people approach the Gemora anyways. They say, all that theoretical stuff, how do we paskin, by the way? Right? You have a lot of people who do that, right? They get fed up with the Gemora and they say, okay, after all said and done, how do we paskin? That's what I want to know. I want to know how we paskin.
Yeah, but Shulchan Aruch doesn't often agree with those things.
Well, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. The point is, as far as learning Gemora, that's like an important stopping point. When it says Hilchasa, it's like the Gemora is stopping the train and saying, by the way, I know we had a lot of arguments, a lot of discussions, I just want to clear the air. And remember, like, we talked about this, and there was a lot of opinions, and especially here, we had 2 opinions and we had 2 versions. That's basically like, 4 different opinions here. So the Gemora is clearing the air. By the way, in case you were wondering, the halacha is blah blah blah. So Rashi's saying the Gemora is making it sound like we really hold like that. Rashi said it's not really true, by the way, because mostly, like you were saying, we don't paskin like a hilchah. So normally we do, actually, but this one we don't. This one, according to Rashi, if you open up Shulchan Aruch, you won't say like this hilchah. That's Rashi's point. Because we really don't hold like the guy who's saying this hilchasa. Some guy's getting up and making that statement, but we know his real identity. At least what he really holds inside is that he holds that there is an Isser of Muksa in general. That's Rabbi Yehuda's way of looking at things. But Rashi says, but we don't even hold that way. We hold the halacha l'maisa is what? Rabbi Shimon. Which, by the way, after reading all the different, since the first page of Beitsa, we had this Shiloh. Right? Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Yehuda. One of them holds a muksa, one of them doesn't hold a muksa. Well, how do we paskin? I'd really love to know. Here we have Rashi sort of opening up the curtain and saying, by the way, guys, we don't hold a muksa. We hold like Rabbi Shimon. He could have said that at the beginning of the Masechta, by the way. Remember, he spoke about Rabbi Shimon at the very beginning?
Yes.
The oil.
The Nosar Shemin, Mosar Shemin, whatever. Yeah.
Why did he leave it till now?
Well, because there it was just part of the discussion. No one's getting up and saying the halacha. Here, where someone actually got up and said the halacha, and Rashi's saying, oh my gosh, he's making it sound like we hold a muksa. I want to clear the air here and just let everybody in the audience know we really don't hold a muksa. We really hold like Rabbi Shimon. Because somebody got up, as it were, and had the audacity to declare the halacha like Rabbi Yehuda, as it were. Rashi's saying, no, sorry, we don't even consider you to be true because we know that we pass like Rabbi Shimon, really. So this is a point at which you could say there might be other Rishonim, Tosfos, the Rosh, the Ran, other ones, the Ramban, who might disagree with Rashi and learn this Gemora is true, not somebody that we don't paskin like, but that whoever got in the Gemora got up and said Hilchasa, he knew what he was talking about. If the Gemora is saying Hilchasa, the Gemora is declaring that we pass on like Rabbi Yehuda, according to Rashi. So Rashi's statement here that, this is just someone who holds like Rabbi Yehuda, but we hold like Rabbi Shimon. Other Rishonim might disagree with that Rashi and say, no, this Gemora is a proof that we pass on like Rabbi Yehuda. Just look who got up and said the halacha. Someone held like Rabbi Yehuda. That obviously shows we hold like Rabbi Yehuda. But Rashi's resisting that. Very uncharacteristic of Rashi, right? He's like saying, don't believe this Gemora. Very, very, right. You're used to like rabbis without beards who say things like that, right? At least in the old days, that's what they used to say, you know. Don't believe that rabbi, he doesn't have a beard.
Okay, Bain, Mutzer, with the
Continue with the Rashi.
What's it? Rosh Hashanah?
What?
Svirlan. We hold.
Rashi's actually sticking out his neck here and saying, by the way, you guys, you should know what we really hold. We really hold like Rabbi Shimon. Now that means that Rashi went through all of the Gemora Beitsa and all the Gemora of Shabbos and all the Gemoras of Eruvin probably as well. There's a lot of halachas of Muksa and Maseches Eruvin. And I think even Pesachim has a lot of Hilchas Muksa. Maybe even Chagiga and Tainus. I don't know. All of Moed really. And Rashi feels he has a lot of proofs from wherever that we pass like Rabbi Shimon. Okay, maybe he'll actually tell us where he's getting his proofs from, but right? As far as I know, the Rif, I think, gets into that same discussion. Do we pass like Rabbi Shimon or not? At the end of Maseches Shabbos, if I'm not mistaken. You'll find a discussion in the Rif, which the Rif was one of the major poskim of the Yerushalyim, right?
Bain b'muktzah, with the case of muktzah, Bain dorish ein miskaven. There was somebody who didn't have kavanah.
Now Rash is getting to very new territory. We weren't even talking about this. Rash says, once I'm clearing the air, might as well clear up a few other issues as well. Remember, there's a Machlokas, Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Yehuda, a number of topics to do with Shabbos and Yom Tov. And actually to do with a lot of other halachas, not just Shabbos and Yom Tov. Davar she'eino miskaven. You know what that means?
Something that you did
Not intended.
Didn't intend for it to happen. Now, the classic case is... Yes, but the truth of the matter is, even when it has nothing to do with Shabbos, there is an area of halacha which said he wasn't intending for that thing to happen. So it's not just Shabbos, but let's assume right now it's in terms of Shabbos. So what's the classic case? Anyone know the classic case where we talk about, oh, he just did that. Is it mutter or asur? Because you either hold it's mutter or asur. Anyone?
We did that with the deer that you come to.
I don't remember.
That's obviously not the case.
The classic case is where you drag what's called a safsal. It uses three examples: mita, kise, and safsal. All of them basically like small furniture across the lawn. And it makes a charitz. It makes a furrow, which is like a bit like plowing. Okay? So it says it depends whether they're very heavy or light, right? If they're very light, then they probably won't make a charitz. If they're very heavy, then it's a psik reisha. Then it's automatic that they will. But we're talking about the case right in the middle. It's not automatic they will, and it's not for sure that they won't. It could happen, right? But he's not mechavan for it. Would you let him do it? Would you let him drag a... What's the halacha? Was anyone ever told by their rabbi, don't do that, not allowed? Or a rabbi who would have told you if it was us, or he'd let you do it. He'd let you drag your chair across the lawn, right? You went to visit the rabbi and he was having brunch out in the back, and you dragged your chair across the lawn. Did he say anything, not say anything? What do you say, Jack? Were you ever reprimanded by your rabbi?
No, actually.
Maybe a long time
Conservative. I found out later.
Okay.
So it says,
I remember my father used to praise the
vote.
conservative rabbi. And I even know his name because my father would always bring him up, Rabbi Shushat.
Yeah.
He said, you know why he praised him? He says because his father sent him to a boys' school forget what the name of it, what they call those things. No, like during the war, during World War II, my father was like 13 at the time. And the goyim, and he told him he must put on tefillin. My grandfather, I didn't even know he was that religious, but he made my father promise to put on his tefillin at the school, at the boarding school. And the goyisher boys would beat him up. So he went crying home, and the rabbi told my grandfather, you must not force the boy, you can't have him get all beaten up. And apparently my grandfather, who was from Romania, was a bit of a tough guy, wanted him to put it on, even if he's going to get beat up. Today they would say, you beat them up, right? Today they would throw all the other guys out of the school for being anti-Semitic, but whatever. And my father always praised Rabbi Shushat, who didn't force me to put on tefillin, who had the sense to tell me I didn't have to put on tefillin. And what would I say? That Rabbi Shushat is responsible for my father never putting on tefillin again for the rest of his life. Thank you very much, Rabbi Shushat. That's what my father used to say. He's always brought it up, Rabbi Shushat. Anyhow, yes, what were we going to say?
Long time ago.
Never
I remember.
were ever reprimanded by your parents.
Yes.
Okay. But sometimes you have these cases where a rabbi will see you doing something and say, no, we don't do that, right? That's how they do it. Not as like browbeating, but they say, we don't do that, right? That's how a person with sensibility makes sure to say something when you see something being done and not offend the person, not make the person feel like dirt. Excuse the pun. So the point being that that's called davar she'eino miskaven. Dragging the chair across the lawn. I have no reason to make a furrow. I'm trying to get the chair from A to B. All I want to do is join the crowd on the other side and eat my latkes, right? But I have to get a chair on the cross and I can't pick it up, so I'm dragging it, or I'm a little bit too lazy to pick it up, so I want to drag it. And it's not for sure that it'll make a furrow, and why allowed? That happens to be a machlokas Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Yehuda. There's a number of places in where we find a machlokas Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Yehuda. Rashi is bringing up another one now that has nothing to do with muksa.
So we're playing with the chicken here?
That's psikration.
Yeah.
In that case, there are those who say that both Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Yehuda would agree that if it's bound to happen, then you can't call it eino miskaven. You can't say I didn't mean for it to happen. It's like saying I'm shooting you and I don't mean to shoot you. I don't mean to kill you. You're a crazy man if you say stuff like that. So if you're trying to drag something that's extremely heavy and you say, well, I don't know, right? Not very believable. Right, so it has to be a bit more believable than that. So if it's not, so that's why, you can't really say when something's bound to happen, which we call psikration, that you're not mechavan. So they don't really argue in that case where it's bound to happen. They argue in the case where it's not bound to happen. But it still may happen. Are you mechuyev to not do something? So that's what Rashi is bringing up now. What about that other machlokas in davar she'eino miskaven? Rashi says,
Rabbi Yehuda.
no, the sentence starts before that.
Miskaven.
Aval anan ke Rabbi Shimon sfiralein lan. We hold like Rabbi Shimon. Bain. Bain. Davar she'eino miskaven. So what's he saying? We hold like Rabbi Shimon. Bain this and bain that means what?
Other in the case of
Not either, both.
both by muktzah and where they didn't have kavanah to do a malacha.
Right. In a case that's called eino miskaven. In that major machlokas, Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Yehuda, davar she'eino miskaven, as well as in the area of the question of whether there's an isur muksa or not, then we pass in like Rabbi Shimon. Says Rashi. Right. It's very important Rashi to remember on Daf Lamed Gimel in Beitsa. Rashi is making a stand on this issue that may be a machlokas rishonim, but Rashi is letting it be known what he holds to be true.
So what's he actually saying?
He's telling us how we paskin, which is very uncharacteristic of Rashi. That's what I started out by saying.
No, in this particular
We paskin like Rabbi Shimon, both in the issue of muksa and also in this other side machlokas of davar she'eino miskaven. So halakha l'maisa, according to Rashi, we'd be allowed to use things that are normally called muksa, right? But all that means is that when Shabbos or Yom Tov came in, it didn't have a use, and then in the middle of Shabbos or Yom Tov, you developed a usage for it, or it developed into something that had a usage. As long as right now you have a use for it, you're allowed to use it. That's by definition not muksa according to Rabbi Shimon. He doesn't care that it didn't start Shabbos that way, that when it started Shabbos it looked like muksa, not usable. Okay, and also, it's not the case of the shirt, by the way, because the case of the shirt is not even a sure thing that everyone argues on that. If you know for sure it's going to become usable in the middle of Shabbos or in the middle of Yom Tov, then it could be, like we said before, your mind is already on it. Remember we used that svara yesterday, your mind was already on it before Shabbos or Yom Tov started. Talked about the innards being foul smelling, and therefore your mind was already on it. So if, when Shabbos or Yom Tov started, your mind was already on this object, that I want to use this object, just, I'm not going to use it right now, but I'll use it later on, then it's not muksa according to everybody, because your mind was on it. But here we're talking about something, your mind wasn't really on it, and at the beginning of Shabbos or Yom Tov wasn't at all fit to use. But in the middle it became fit to use, and it wasn't expected either. So therefore Rabbi Shimon would say, I don't care. Like the case of Moser Shemen Shebener, right? You have a canister filled with oil, and it's burning away, and sometimes it all gets used up. I know I have this, we use oil for lighting Shabbos candles, not the wax kind. It's supposed to be segul or whatever. So I come to clean it and get it ready every Erev Shabbos, B'li for my wife to be able to light. Sometimes I come up there and it's all been used up, all the oil's been used up the week before, and sometimes a little bit of oil there. It doesn't for sure happen, it doesn't not happen, it just doesn't always happen. It's not expected, but it does happen. So that's what Rabbi Shimon says, if you happen to find oil in there in the middle of Shabbos, even though when Shabbos came in you couldn't use it. Because you can't just take oil out while the flame is, it's like putting out a fire in halacha. So you have to wait till the flame goes out. When the flame goes out, sometimes the oil's all used up. But if there's a little bit left over, which again wasn't necessarily expected, but you're happy when you find a little bit of oil left over. They say, I could use a bit of oil, and you scoop it out and you put it on your salad or whatever, right?
I'm still in trouble with this sentence. Because muktzah is when you have no intention of using it.
No, I just explained to Jack, perhaps you heard a little bit of the discussion, that muktzah means, okay, the case of muktzah that we talk about them arguing, like Moser Shemen Shebener, is where you have something that in the middle of Shabbos or Yom Tov becomes functional, you have a usage for it, but it was not expected to happen at the beginning of Shabbos. When Shabbos came in, it wasn't functional. For some reason it became functional in the middle, but it wasn't necessarily expected to happen. And therefore Rabbi Yehuda says, I'm sorry, I can't let you use it, even though right now it has a function. But when Shabbos or Yom Tov started, it didn't. And that's the rule. If it starts Shabbos or Yom Tov as muksa, it remains muksa for all of Shabbos or Yom Tov. That's the famous sheet of Rabbi Yehuda. That's the classic place where he says, no, can't use it, even though right now you feel you have a function for it. Rabbi Shimon says no, like in the case of the oil. Shabbos or Yom Tov started, it wasn't functional. Why? Because I'm not allowed to take oil out of the candle. It's considered to be putting out a flame. Right?
Yeah.
Shabbatai?
Yeah, I'm happy with the explanations, but I'm just...
I know, but when you don't listen to everything I say, then we end up coming
No,
to a point where you say, very nice, Rabbi, but I still don't understand.
No, I do
So
understand.
just try to listen to what I'm saying without trying to find a way to get around it. Like, I give you time afterwards. I'll give you adequate time afterwards to tear me down. First, just listen to what I'm saying. The classic case is, as we said, no Sar Shemen Shebener, okay, which is a case where when Shabbos or Yom Tov came in, it was not usable, it was not functional, right?
I understand this.
And later on it becomes usable, it becomes functional, but that wasn't expected to happen, okay? In that kind of a case, what does Rabbi Yehuda say?
No.
Even when now you, let's say, in the middle of the night when the flame finally goes out, you say, now it has a function, I can use it for my salad. He says no, because when Shabbos started, it wasn't, and it has to remain muktzah the whole time. And Rabbi Shimon says, no, if right now you have a function for it, go for it. Right? You're not locked into muksa all of Shabbos. If you now, Lamaisa, have a function for this, have a use for this, use it. Very practical guy. Rabbi Shimon. Imagine he was in the cave and he needed a lot of candles. Right? So, he was very makel. Okay, so you still have a question over there? What's your question?
With the language I'm having.
Okay, so then, now say the whole sentence.
Your explanation, I understand.
So say the whole sentence the way you see it.
When he says here, Bein Muktzah,
You're starting in the middle. Don't start in the middle. Aval anan
Aval Anan Kerabi Shimon,
spiralon.
Bein Muktzah.
What?
Bein,
Word spiralon.
we hope.
We hold.
We hope, yeah.
So that say that half of the sentence now in English. But
but we hold like Rabbi Shimon.
that's right. And now, where do we hold like Rabbi Shimon? Bain.
Bein Muktzah, Bein B'daber,
Davar.
Davar, She'enu
Mitkaven.
So this is my question was, so it's just technically, it's just
Okay.
a technical thing.
We hold like Rabbi Shimon, both in the subject of muksa,
Right.
i.e., where he holds there is no problem with the muksa.
That's not my question. The question is the definition of these terms here. Because in muktzah is something that you never had an intention of using, right? And the next three words is
It's a different halacha.
davar ein kabbalah.
It may be in a whole different section of Shulchan Aruch. That has nothing to do with it. Rashi's not putting them together because they're thematically related. He's putting them together because he's clearing the air. You ever had a fight with your wife and she clears the air, she starts to talk about every grievance she's ever had with you?
Every day.
That's supposed to clear
So
the air.
she wouldn't have never brought it up if you hadn't right now made a mistake and not taken out the garbage. But then when she brings up all the other stuff, what does she bring up? Something that has nothing to do with garbage. She says, and last week you forgot to pick me up at the club, and the week before you forgot to buy me roses. She's saying, but what does that have to do with the garbage? She says, no, but you reminded me. Now I'm clearing the air. That's Rashi's doing. He's clearing the air. Okay? He's saying, you know, there's famous machlokas between Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Huda in a number of places in Shas. And I'm taking this opportunity to clear the air, to tell you the truth of the matter. In case you were wondering, how do we really paskin? Because we're always bringing up Rabbi Huda as if we hold of Rabbi Huda. And here it's even worse. The person getting up and saying halacha as if we really hold like Rabbi Huda. And Rashi's saying, I want to just clear the air. We do not hold like Rabbi Shimon. Neither do we hold like Rabbi Shimon in Hilchos Muksa, nor in a completely different matter do we hold like Rabbi Yehuda in the answer of Davar She'einu Miskaven. In two completely related topics, he's clearing the air and saying to us, in those places where there's often brought down a machlokas Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon, and this is my chance to clear the air and tell you we do not pass like Rabbi Yehuda. Sorry, we pass like Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon in all of these cases. Not because they're related per se, but because they're both places, prominent things, which we have a machlokas Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon in those things. Rashi's saying, okay, you want to bring up something that's controversial? I'm going to get very controversial on you. I'm going to scream at the top of my lungs that we pass on like Rabbi Shimon, both in what we're talking about now, muksa, and even something we weren't even talking about now, like your wife. She'll bring up all sorts of things that have nothing to do with the thing right now. But she says, if I don't bring it up now, then you're going to think I'm happy with you. No, I'm not happy with you. Better clean up your act. Start taking out the garbage. Picking me up at the club. Buying me roses on our anniversary. What guy are you?
Where does it say that?
What?
Where does it say that in the Shulchan Aruch?
In the fifth section, where it's called Seichel.
Not
to anger the sleeping dog.
Not Mazikim.
Arouse
The damages.
The wrath. Right. No one knows the wrath like a scorned woman. What do they call it?
Yeah, it's more than that.
That's it.
That's it.
I've been lucky because my wife was away for the last 2.5 weeks.
Peace.
Finally started getting a taste of what it's going to be like when she comes home. She wrote me a bunch of WhatsApps. I was on the road, so I answered very tersely. She's like, I had no idea what you're saying. Can you please, if you have nothing to say, don't send me any more WhatsApps. I'm like, oh, okay, I was trying to be nice, but see, I angered the sleeping dog. All right, anyhow, I'll probably get the full wrath of it. Oh, I got another dose of it this afternoon. She said, please pray for me that we don't get stopped for the luggage because we're right on the borderline of having to have luggage is too heavy, and that's like the nightmare that they stop you and they make you take stuff out of it, and there's nothing you can do but basically throw it in the garbage at the airport, unless your relative is there to take it home. So I said, look, the stuff you bought for me, you don't have to bring. I don't really need anything new. She says, no, don't even talk like that. It's ridiculous. I'll leave one of my nightgowns.
Please.
No, you need your nightgowns. I don't need a new whatever, right?
Yes,
She's like, no, I have many nightgowns. It's like the reverse argument. She should have been saying, what, you're telling me to throw out my nightgowns? I'll throw out your suit. You know, and I'm like, no, don't throw out my suit. Throw out your nightgown. But it was the opposite. It was like, you know, just to show you how you can make an argument out of anything. She's saying she's going to throw out her nightgown. I say, no, don't throw out your nightgown. Throw out my suit. So I wasn't saying throw it out. I was saying leave it at your sister's house, so, you know, pick it up another time. No, don't tell me to do that. I just told you to daven for me. That's all I told you. So
The officials better comply with all this
I'm
stuff.
now officially in the doghouse before she walks in the door.
So enjoy the peace and quiet.
Yeah, tonight's our
But when
last
she comes-
supper. Tonight's our last supper. My son and I. For
Okay, enjoy it.
gonna try
The world's wife is coming back tomorrow.
tomorrow morning this one show. Direct flight from Miami.
Really?
Her flight is at 1 in the afternoon. She's of the political persuasion. You have to be there 3 hours before a flight.
That's true.
And then her sister told her she has to give themselves 3 hours to get to the airport because the traffic can be crazy early morning Miami area. So leaving at 7 o'clock in the morning for a flight at 1 o'clock.
That's not so unusual.
Anyhow,
How long is the flight from Miami to Tel Aviv?
it's about a 12-hour flight.
Yeah, they're also-
Theoretically, she's getting in at 1 in the morning, but it's 7 hours later here, so it's 8 in the morning. All right, now that you know all about my personal life, let's continue. In Rashi, I hope everyone understood my mashal. Nothing that I said was real, of course. My wife is an angel.
Better turn off my recorder.
I noticed it's not being recorded today.
I wonder you're so candid.
If you want to make sure I don't say any more statements like that, you might have turned it on, but in the meantime...
So candid.
Okay, you're good with the phrase now? Yeah, candid camera.
I am good. I understand exactly what you are saying.
No, you were thinking that they're related. I just explained to you that they're not related.
I see the two. Yeah.
They're not related.
Okay.
They're two separate things, but they happen to argue on.
All right.
So Rosh is clearing the air. One of them was discussed in this Gemora, Muksa. So Rosh cleared the air on that one. And the other one, which wasn't discussed here at all, but is discussed numerous times in Shas, the question of Darushanim Miskab, and Rashi says, I'm going to use this opportunity to clear the air on that one as well. Just because we're talking about Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon, not because it's thematically related to our Gemora. That's why I said to you, this Rashi is extremely unique. He's starting to say things that he would never say in any other Gemora, because Rashi's, it's like not your job description. Rashi's job description is to explain the Gemora. All he has to do is explain the Gemara. He doesn't have to tell me his political views on life.
Yeah, you've had a fight with his wife.
Yeah. But Rashi felt it's important, right? Sometimes a person speaks out when it's things that are important to him. So Rashi said, I do want to tell you this is only going to Rabbi Yehuda. That's already explaining the Gemara. That's part of his job description. But then he's saying, but by the way, we don't even hold like this. That's already out of his job description. That's Rashi, the Posek Hador speaking now, not the Mafarish. Yeah, I mean, I appreciate his opinion, and I'm very happy if we pass like Rabbi Shimon. Life is much easier according to Rabbi Shimon. You get to use things that would normally be muksa. So you get to drag your chairs across the lawn half the time that you wouldn't be able to according to Rabbi Yehuda. So I'm happy that this Rashi is speaking it out. Doesn't necessarily mean that we pass something like that in Shulchan Aruch. We'd have to look it up in the Mishnah Berurah or whatever to see how the final tally is, if everyone agrees with Rashi or not. But Rashi's opinion is big. And you see the Rishonim do value Rashi's opinion. Almost on every issue they start out. Rashi says this, but they always start out with Rashi. Rashi was like the granddad of everything. And often we do pass like Rashi. Often if Rashi says something, we don't want to just ignore Rashi. We definitely give him a lot of weight. Okay. Are we ready? Shabbatai?
Sure.
Before they close the gates?
Yeah, I'm gonna leave soon.
Alright, but I'd like to finish the Rashi first. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure, I'd like.
Thank you.
I have 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
In your tight schedule. Okay.
It's horrible for that.
Okay, Mr. 1%. You sound like with the 1%. I have only 10 minutes for you now.
Your life is going to a circus.
Yeah.
Yeah, you believe it.
People usually are jealous of someone who lives in the old city, but I've become aware that it's not something you want to be jealous about.
This.
Not that crazy.
The rabbi said not to do what they're apparently doing. This rabbi is claiming that these circus people are handing out non-kosher food. If you read the third line of the first paragraph of that letter, they're warning people that they've been handing out non-kosher food at these events.
The missionaries?
No,
And by the way, the fact that you're rushing back to make this event when they're serving non-kosher food does not speak well for you.
I know, the food's good.
That's the point. Okay.
Okay,
Okay, let's go on before we get into bigger trouble here. Aval anan Rabbi Shimon Sferlon, Bein b'muksa.
Bein Dalashevim Miskave.
Okay, now weiter.
Rabbi Yehuda, Machshiroi of Nefesh.
Okay, so now Rashi's going a little bit more in the direction of Rabbi Yehuda. He's saying we also paskin. He's clearing up a third issue now. In Chshiri Ochel Nefesh. There's a machlokas not between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon, but between Rabbi Yehuda and the Rabbanan. Remember we had that before where we said, I remember we said, according to Rabbi Yehuda, you shouldn't do something. Oh, Rashi said, clearing out the oven, I think it was. Don't clear out the oven, because you're fixing the oven, right? That's said in the Mishnah. Rashi says it's going like Rabbi Yehuda. No, it's going like the Rabbanan. It should be machmer not to do much Yerushalyim nefesh. Then in the Gemora it said, but if you can't cook the food any other way, then you can do it. And because in the end of the day, we do pass like Rabbi Yehuda for machshir Yerushalyim nefesh. Okay, so Rashi's clearing up that one. Okay, weiter.
Okay, Kulo Shar.
What does that mean?
All of them permitted.
All of these cases are really permissible, Rashi's saying. Rashi's saying a big chiddush now, but again, Hilchos is kind of like airing out everything. So Rashi's saying, you know what? I'm going to air out all the issues now. And let the secret. The secret is, all these things are permissible. What is permissible?
Bein Chizra.
The case of Chizra. What was the case of Chizra? This case of using the skewer.
Yeah.
He's saying it's mutter. Even the case of the wet one. Even the wet one. Seemingly. Because there's no problem with muksa. And he said there's only a problem if you hold a muksa. If you don't know the muksa, which we hold like Rabbi Shimon, no problem with muksa, you can use the chizra. The wet one even. Weiter, bein.
Smichas Kideres.
Also regarding
the
supporting the pot of food with what? What do you think he's talking about? Supporting the with what?
Barrels.
No, that was different. That was not called smicha. If you look back in the Mishnah, that was called something else. That was called
The bakiyats.
the bikas. The other thing was called makifin. Lishpos. When you put a pot on a fire, it's called lishpos. So that was where we said not to do that. And we're holding our guns there. Don't do it in the order of barrel, pot. You can put pot and then barrel, we said. But as far as the other thing about supporting a pot was with the bikas, was with wood. And we said wood has only one function, to burn. And for anything else it's muksa. But Rashi just said, but we don't hold a muksa. Which means we hold like Rabbi Shimon that if you happen to have a function for it, go for it. Practical.
Yeah.
And so he's saying therefore we could support the kedera with the bikas. Because what could be the problem? Muksa, we don't hold a muksa.
Because he said was
A piece of wood, like a block of wood. Some people call the case, we had two cases, the pot and the door. So the door was more like the case of like a door stopper. You have this piece of wood that fits directly under the door, which so to speak supports the door, but what it really does is stop the door from opening or closing one way or the other. So the same thing with the pot, you'd have these little pieces of wood that you want to put the pot down, but you don't want to put it on the ground or whatever, you just want to put it on basically like a pot holder. But it hasn't been properly fashioned, it's just a chunk of wood. If it's been properly fashioned, it's a kli, of course you can use it. But if it hasn't been properly fashioned, it's just a piece of wood you found lying around, and you'd like to use it as to put the pot down on,
Support.
right? And it was like a makeshift pot holder, you can't. This, according to the Mishnah, Rashi's saying, but that's because the Mishnah held a muksa, but we don't hold a muksa. So therefore you can. And now he's going to talk about the other thing about putting the barrels and that's called hakafos kavios, surrounding the fire with these barrels and everything, right? And the case of Madura also, where we told you to build it from the top down instead of from the down up, because of Ohel, the makeshift tent problem. That's called Madurata.
Kedera.
And the problem of Kedera, which at the end we said that case of Kedera was what? Was where we had a problem
It's
of...
because.
What?
Kedera the because.
No, that was a different one. In this list at the top of the page. All those things were Kedera.
Put it on two barrels, what Rashi says, Kedera.
Yeah.
Like,
Maybe it is. Maybe it's the case.
talking about no, it shouldn't surround it first.
Whatever. All those cases. All these cases, Rashi seems could be makel in.
It's all about making the roof, right? To put the,
Yeah, but Rashi seems to be saying we could be makel in for some reason. The kol ha-amoraim,
what he's saying, right?
all these amoraim that we just saw in the sugya,
She'asur es elu l'mayla talmidei derav haveh.
right? All these are people who said that it's asur.
Rashi.
Rashi. The first wide line in Rashi, right? You see sort of right underneath where the Gemora ends, there's a lot wider line of Rashi.
Kedera, the kol.
Yeah, but in the middle it says V'chol ha-amoraim, right after the word Kedera.
She'asur es
All the Amoraim,
Sha'as.
She'asur Eselu, has said these things are asur. This whole list of things that we said are problematic. Rashi's saying all those people who said that,
talmidei derav haveh.
they were
Talmidei-
only Talmidim of Rav, by the way. And Rav,
Sava la Rabbi Yehuda.
he holds like Rabbi Yehuda. We have proof that Rav holds like Rabbi Yehuda.
Muktzah, he does hold a muktzah.
And Anan,
Kaima la Rabbi Shimon.
we hold like Rabbi Shimon.
He doesn't
Even though a lot of these issues were not necessarily muksa issues, Rashi's lumping it all together. Pretty strange Rashi, I'll have to tell you.
Anan is wheat.
We. It's like a shortened form of the word anachnu. If you think of the word anachnu, it has an aleph and a nun and a nun, but instead of just being anan, we usually say anachnu. But it's a shortened form. It's actually the Aramaic word, but it's very similar to anachnu. So it's good, easier to remember. Okay, so you get what Rashi's saying over here. It's extremely strange Rashi. He's gone way off of script, so to speak, and he's vented a lot of issues. How do we hold generally on Muksa? How do we hold generally on Davar Shem's Kavin? And then he opens up that this whole sugya, by the way, a lot of these things we don't hold of, because a lot of these things are dependent on Rav, who are dependent on Rabbi Yehuda, and we hold like Rabbi Shimon, so he made everything, he turned everything around over here. Sort of pulled the wool from my eyes. Now I can truly see this sugya for what it is. It's all propaganda. It's all people we don't hold like. Put up by the Communist Party. Actually, we don't hold it anyway. We don't hold it anyway. Okay. In the meantime, very strange Rashi. We'll call it just uncharacteristic at least. And in Halacha L'Maisa, I'm not sure. Rashi raised a lot of issues that Rashi's claiming how we paskin. We'd have to see Halacha L'Maisa how we really paskin. Okay, let's go on in the Gemora before Marinos takes off. Runs for the gates, like the Kentucky Derby.
The gates are closing.
Literally closing.
The problem with the running is that afterwards you say I ran, and then we say he holds like I ran. That's very unpopular these days. Okay. Let's go back to the Gemora. Darash Rava. Right? Rava made a statement over here about Isha. A woman should not go into the woodshed. Right? In order to take a twig for lighting the fire, for kindling or whatever. Okay, let's see in Rashi why that is. What's so wrong with that? Wait, hello? Anyone want to get into the act who didn't have enough chance to read Rashi? Because it's really had an extremely long Rashi to read. He's in rare form. But anyone else want to get into the act before they run for the gate?
That's the Darasher.
Yes, Darash Rava.
Isha lo
So Rashi says,
tikaneis ledir haitzim. He told me
Oud.
to take from it a twig.
Yeah. Okay, so now Rashi should hopefully tell us what's going on over here. First of all, Darash Rava, Rashi says, why is he against going into the woodshed to get a twig? Rashi says, you have the Rashi, third wide line of Rashi, first words. Rebbe. Yeah, and last two words. Svira lay. Rashi says, you know why Rav is saying all this? Because, and by the way, it's not just Rashi who says it. The Gemora afterwards is Medayik. The Rava must hold like. Remember we did this yesterday. Remember the Gemora? It made a diuk. From Rava's saying it's Asur, we made a diuk that Rava must hold what? That it's like Rabbi Yehuda. Gemora went into the whole thing about that. Does he really hold like Rabbi Yehuda? Blah, 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 blah. So Rashi bring it right away. You know why Rava could say this? Because he holds like Rabbi Yehuda. And what does that mean, he holds like Rabbi Yehuda? That there is an Isser of Muksa. And therefore the Oud is considered Muksa in regards to what he wants to use it for. He wants to use it, if it's for kindling, then it'll be mutter. It can't be for kindling. You must want to use it, like I said, like to light the candle. Like they have the guy who lights the Madura. They have this big tzaddik, one of the great rabbis. He comes and just lights the Madura, takes a twig, long thing. Right. So is that called using wood for burning a fire, or is that for something else? So that was like part of the question we had before. When do you call it using it for the fire? So he's saying it's Asur because he holds like Rabbi Yehuda that it's Muksa. Now, deer is what? It meant deer Eitzi. Now the Gemora said deer Eitzi. So I'm not sure what Rashi wants over here. But okay, fine. Oud, what's an Oud?
Twig.
Rashi, end of the third wide line in Rashi.
Oud. Eitz. Lasot. Oud.
L'tanur.
Tanur.
That's like using the word to define the word. We didn't know what Oud was, so then that doesn't help us. Okay, let's go on. What is he really saying? He gives a French word. Now, this is for people who live in Montreal. They know French. Bourguin. Any word comes to your mind? Bourguin or pois? Maybe you don't pronounce the R. Pois. Pargan. Poigan. Poigin. No? Doesn't ring a bell?
No.
All right, when you go back to Montreal, ask them about this word. Now,
Swarty guy.
anybody French should know this old French word, right? But Tsama, And the reason is,
Mishum Delo Nitnu Ella
lahasik. Right? That's what the Gemora said before. That according to the one Shita, wood has only one function on Yom Tov. You can use it. And we're talking about wood that hasn't been prepared before. Right? Wood that's just wood. Has no real function. So we're saying the only thing you're allowed to use it for is actually burning a fire. As fuel for the fire. That's lahasik. Ela im kain, and this Rashi said once before, and unless. Right. Remember you were happy when Rashi said this yesterday? You said it cleared up a lot for you? But today you should be equally as happy. And if you weren't running out the door, you'd be happy.
I'm happy inside.
You'd be happy as you run around the door at least. So Rashi's saying, if you would have done it yesterday, right? If you would have done it yesterday and done something, I don't even know what you would do. Sharpen it, or I don't know, straighten it out, or maybe just set it aside. That would have been enough to make it into a kli. But now you want to go in the middle of Yom Tov just to pick out a twig in the, just to use to light the fire. No, that's not called the normal function that they allow. As Rashi said before, this is only like Rabbi Yehuda who holds a muksa. Rabbi Shimon for sure say it's mutter, but according to Rabbi Yehuda that there is an isra of muksa, this would be asr, and that's what Rav is saying.
Sorry,
No problem, no problem.
Only one day left, and then the gates can close with the gates close.
Look, I'm going to write my own letter now. They take away my Talmud in the middle of this year.
Yeah.
It's even worse than serving nevelas and trefus.
So many peace there yesterday, because I've never seen anything like it. Maybe they had threats.
Police.
See, whenever the reporting counts or something like this, they expect trouble.
Oh,
Stone throwing.
yeah. Well, at least they didn't bring the sewer water. They used to spray people who were protesting with this horrible water.
I don't know what that
Special
is.
stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know why they didn't
I
spray the
stepped on
arrows.
it once, and it's like, oh, it was disgusting.
Why didn't they use that in Gaza when they were jumping over the fence?
They did.
They didn't. They didn't. I don't think
I
so.
don't think
They
it's
just shot them with bullets.
crowd dispersal.
It's easier to shoot them.
And they didn't stop, but they were dead.
It's easier to shoot them.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Sure.
See you,
tomorrow.
be well.
See you.
See you tomorrow.
See you.
Be well.
Apologize.
Take care.
All right, let's try to finish up here. Is there another Rashi? No. So let's keep our finger on the Rashi though, because the next little thing that Rava says, there is a Rashi on that as well. So he said, don't go in to get this twig or whatever, and also Ud Shanishbar. What if the twig broke? Now it's just a bunch of crumpled pieces of wood. Then in the Gemora it says Ud Shanishbar what? Aser lahasika b'yamtiv. Right? Okay, so what if it breaks? That's aser as well. So if it hasn't broken, you want to throw it into the fire as firewood. You're allowed. You want to use it for something else, you're not allowed, because that's the rule that you only use firewood for firewood and not for anything else, according to the field of books. But if it did break, then it's like anything else that broke, then you're not allowed to use it for that reason as well. So the Gemora says that masikim b'kelim ve'ein masikim b'shivri kelim. You're allowed to throw into the fire of Yom Tov to burn, to cook your food, proper kelim, right? You can throw your chopping block in there, you can throw your chair in there, you can throw anything you want, but not a broken kli. So you want to take this oud that broke and use it as firewood, you can't. That's the rule. Again, according to the one who holds the books. You can't, because it's broken. Anything that's broken is called muksa. Something breaks, doesn't have a function anymore for its normal function. You can't use it even for something else. Okay, it's like a broken watch, right? It has no function. You can't use a broken watch.
Sure.
They say a woman is allowed to because a woman never wears a watch for time because she's always late, right? So she's only wearing it for show and it still looks nice even if it's broken. Anyhow, that's a big shine. Okay, Let's see the Rashi, the fifth wide line in Rashi. V'luchen nishbar b'yomtiv. I think you guys are reading this before. Okay, we don't even have any more Rashis on this part. So let's go back to the Gemora, if we have time. So you want to work through the next thing of Rava said? In the Gemora? Right before the Mishnah. Lamemra. The Gemora has the statement of Rava about the oud. Can you go into the woodshed for the oud? No. And if the oud breaks, can you use it for the firewood? No. And the Gemara now makes a deal. If Rava said that, Lamemra, does that mean to say to Rava, so there's the end of the line says Dir Rava. You see the end of the line says Dir Rava?
Yeah.
Right before that, Lamemra, which is a rhetorical question. Does that mean to say Dir Rava, that Rava, to Rabbi Yehuda, Svirle, that he holds like Rabbi Yehuda in the matter of Muksa, to Islay Muksa, that he holds of Muksa? How could you say that about Rava? But behold, Amar le Rava had once upon a time said, L'shamei, to his servant, Tavi li bar avasa, right? Roast for me a small duck, right? A duckling. And then shadi, and throw me'eha, her intestines, l'shunra. Right? Cutting it, take the guts and throw it to the cats. Right?
Shunra into cats.
Shunra are cats. Some people don't make it to the end of this Seder. They pass out beforehand.
Just hit the sack.
You make it? You make it to the end?
Pass
You don't do it. You don't do it, Chabad,
You do.
You don't do it.
You don't do it. That's why you don't know the word Shunra.
Chabad doesn't do any songs. They
Really?
just- no, it's not.
So you know that you still have sung Chad Gadya on occasion?
No, they don't see that.
But you just looked at it. You saw it. It's in there.
Sure. I used to do it.
Well, you guys don't have any fun.
We used to-
That is the funnest part of the Seder, is the Chad Gadya.
See, the Seder is developed for kids. You see that the whole format of the Seder is developed for kids, make kids interested in, telling stories. That's the whole point of the Seder. In fact, one of the Rabbanim used to put salt on strawberries. So people say there's salt on strawberries. What do you do? What is this? So it was deliberate, just so kids would ask, hey, why do you put salt on strawberries?
Right.
And then he would start.
There's no question that a lot of the things are geared towards keeping the kids awake and keeping the kids interested. But I once had a Rav who said, but it's such a shame that Pesach Seder is wasted on the children. Not that he didn't feel we should do things for the children, he said, but someone who thinks that, like, if it's not for the children, it's a waste, he said, that's just the opposite. It's such a high-level night. The hashpah that comes out from Shemayim, especially at Chatzos, such an incredible hashpah. And an adult who's a mature person can really use that in a very significant way. It's like saying they're giving out gold. So if they have a little gold trinket for my son, I'm interested. But a regular gold goblet, I'm not interested. Like, nobody would say that. They're like, okay, if you have trinkets for children, good, I'll do it for my child. But if you have gold goblets, I'm even more interested. There's gold goblets on Leila Seder. They're handing out for big guys like you, real heavy, spiritual madrigas. You shouldn't just poo-poo it. Anyhow, you guys who don't sing Chad Gadya, I'm sorry, you've never really experienced the pleasure of the Seder. Okay, now, so I'm glad you at least know the word Shunra. Let's see Rashi. Shadi me'eha l'shunra. He told his servant to throw the innards to the cat. And that's supposed to show that he holds a muksa. That he doesn't hold a muksa.
Hashlef leim ma'im chatul.
What's hashleich?
Scatter out.
Right. You know what tashlich? You've heard of tashlich? You guys I hope do tashlich.
Yeah.
That's called throwing away your averas, right? So Rashi's using a Hebrew word instead of the Aramaic word. Classic Rashi. Starting off the Rashi with the pure translation. Shadi hashlich. That's what shadi means. Okay, so now you just learned a Hebrew word and an Aramaic word.
Rabbi Yehuda
So he
also
told him to throw the B'nai Me'ayim. B'nai Me'ayim, the intestines.
the cat.
Okay?
Rabbi Yehuda also the Tafla.
And Rashi is saying it happens to be that according to Rabbi Yehuda, it would have been usher to pick up. So how can you tell your servant? The servant here is not a goyish or servant, not the shiksa. No. They were talking about like a shamus, like a Hasidic Rebbe has a shamus who follows him around or whatever, right?
Yeah, correct.
Who's Jewish, right? He's not going to tell him go turn on the light, Shmerel. No, it's Shabbos. You can tell Shmerel to turn on the light, right?
You can't tell Timmy to turn the light, can you?
No, not really, but you can hint. Anyhow, so he's not telling his shamus to go do something that's usher. So we're making a deal. If he told him to throw out the thing, it means he's picking it up. To throw something out, you have to pick it up and throw it out. If it's muksa, you can't just pick it up, even though I'm just throwing it out. No, you can't even pick it up. Remember at the beginning of the Masechta, we talked about a table that had lots of bones and shells on it. If you hold a muksa, you can't just throw them out. You have to pick up the table in a weird way and
Twisted.
Yeah, not to really touch them. So if he's telling his shamus to throw it out, he's basically saying pick it up and go throw it out. But that means you're picking it up. You're moving muksa. And Rashi's saying, according to Rabbi Yehuda, that wouldn't be mutter. It's muksa. Yeah. Weiter. Yeah. And therefore, lasesa lechatul, to give it out to an animal. Me'esmo muchan la'adam haya. Now this is an interesting point which we're going to have to discuss more perhaps tomorrow, the next day. This is an interesting topic. What if a food starts out as being dog food and then turns into human food? Can you use it on the middle of Shabbos, the middle of Yom Tov? Or is that the same problem as all these muksa questions, that beforehand it wasn't usable and now it's usable? If you hold a muksa, you can't use it. If you don't hold a muksa, then you could use it. So Rashi is saying this thing is not usable. You know why? Because from the beginning of before Yom Tov, it was what? Muchan la'adam. Now why would he call it muchan la'adam? Like a thing
Ready
for a person. Why would you call that? The innards. The innards are because they're part of a duck. They're an intrinsic part of the duck. They're not a separate thing yet. So as an intrinsic part of the duck, then is a duck animal food or dog food? I'm sorry, a human food or dog food? Human food. And these are part of that. They're not separate yet. Afterwards, when you shecht it and you separate it, then it's a separate thing. But till then, it's part of human food. Okay? So he's saying these innards start out as human food. Right? Mucham la'adam. Below l'klov. Right? Because you don't give a duck to a dog. And at this point, the innards are part of the duck. To Ka'amar, and he said, the Erev Shabbos Asura. Whatever, that's a different point. So he's trying to point out why it's muksa. It's muksa because it started out as human food, and now it's dog food. So that's like switching the horses in the middle of the race. That's like the case of the shemen. When Shabbos started, it was part of the candle. You're not allowed to use it. And now you want to use it as salad dressing because the candle went out. But according to Rabbi Yehuda, it would be usher, because you can't do that. If it was usher at the beginning, it's usher now. So he's saying even if it changed from being one category to another, you still can't use it, because this new category was not part of the deal in the beginning of Yom Tov. Yeah, but like it wasn't really muksa. The funny thing is, if these innards are part of the duck, okay, and duck is human food, so it wasn't really muksa. It's part of the duck, which is not muksa. Right? You're allowed to shecht and whatever a duck on Yom Tov. But when you shecht the duck, and now these innards are being taken out, they're now no longer human food. No one's going to eat it as a separate entity. Talking about the intestines. I don't know why the intestines are considered to be only giving to the animals, but that's what he said. Give it to the cat. People didn't eat it for whatever reason. I guess it's also full with it could be full of feces, right?
Finished. It's like that.
Almost.
Everybody supposed to Gemora.
I know, but we're discussing the concept. It's called Torah Shabbat Peh.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what Rashi is saying. Okay, so if it started out as human food and now it switched to category, no longer human food, even though now it's a dog food, but that doesn't make it a new function, because that's the whole problem with muksas, that even if it has a new function now and you like to use it, you can't. It's muksa, but not because it started out as muksa. That's how you normally look at muksa. It started out as muksa, and now you can't just use it even if it became usable. Here, it didn't really start out as muksa. It started out as human food. It's a new reason for saying you can't use it. Something that switched from human food to animal food is you can't use it because it wasn't. It's a new thing. It's like a new thing that wasn't in your world before. It's another reason for being muksa.